It's just us, Scott, this time.
It's just us.
Welcome back to the Dog Tribe podcast. This is episode 10, which is cool because my goal was to be consistent enough to do 10 podcasts. And as we film, we're filming all the video on our phones because there's a ton of equipment that we just can't get to configure yet for future seasons. But yeah, so future speakers, they'll have a different experience.
I'll have nicer stuff.
Yeah, and I was going to say, to some extent, like I give a lot of credit to people that are doing all the podcasting. I called Pat and I was like, dude, you got to help me out. What is the setup? What do you recommend? And that was the first time that I hit that wall. Then I was just thinking, I am not going to sit here and figure this shit out. I'm just not going to. And I felt like I did that for so many years that at this point, I'm like, if I'm going to get good or figure something out, I might as well just pay for the information altogether. I wanted to recap a little bit with you because we've done a lot. You did the whole tour of the Midwest when you got here in June. We met in May, but you got here in June. So how have you found everything? Tell me about your experiences. You got here, you worked a bunch of dogs, you drove around, you get the decoy cert, then you've done a couple of trials now. So tell me what your experience has been so far.
Yeah, so far so good. Can't complain. Yeah, so got here in June, and then I think first week of July was the decoy cert. So that was my first PSA event here. Oh, that's not true. We went to the Cutting Edge Working Dog Trial, which I think was like a week or maybe 2 weeks before that. So that was my first trial. So I got to see the difference between the trials that we had in the UK versus the trials here. And then at the decoy cert was like my first chance to meet a bunch of the players in the Midwest. Decoy wise, PSA people wise, so people who, like Kirby and Siggins and them, a bunch of people who were either had been certified in the Midwest or were attempting to cert in the Midwest as well. So that was great. And then just put faces to names. So obviously like with social media and everything and kind of PSA being a relatively small community and seeing people post in the Facebook group and everything like that, seeing who was who, and then also seeing a bunch of the dogs was nice. Because obviously cert camp dogs are a little bit different than the dogs day-to-day training. And then passed the cert, which was great. And then pretty much just took off from there. Did my first trial in Philly where I got to decoy. Sean Edwards was the judge, which was very cool for him to be the judge at my first trial. So he was super helpful, just pointing me in the right direction. And it was a great trial. We had dogs on all the levels who did really well. And then Midwest regionals, they were down a decoy. So I got to hop in on the Sunday, the day that I showed in the PDC as well. So it was a super exciting day. And then just been around and worked dogs in a bunch of different places.
No, I feel like you're one of those guys that's definitely going after it. You know what I'm saying? Like, for lack of a better expression. Because you got here and sometimes you're like in fucking Canada. You're here, you're driving down to Texas, you're driving around, constantly getting oil changes. And so you're going to be heading to Alaska next year, right? So how did that plan out? How did you end up going there? And then what are you doing there?
So I wasn't really involved in the planning at all. So the woman who's hosting the seminar, so she has a club up there, and obviously it's super isolated. There's not a big scene there. And she seems to be like at the center of it all. And she, I guess, had the idea to have a big roster of people come up and host seminars for a bunch of different stuff. So trial prep stuff, PSA specific stuff, troubleshooting stuff, obedience stuff, protection stuff. And she got in touch with Shelby from Shield Can Ottawa, who got in touch with me, asked if I want to do the protection bit of it. So I assume it'll be mostly PSA focused. It seems like that's what they do up there, but for anyone who's got a dog that bites, we'll be up there. So I assume what it's going to be is like taking the next steps, instructing decoys a little bit as well, because I know they've got a couple of people who work dogs up there. And I think just like giving dogs a different look, I think that's one of the main focuses for them is they're bringing in, I think Ben Lipinski's going, Dave Santiago's going, Jonathan Katz is going, and a couple other people as well. It's great. It's a super cool list. I'm definitely honored to be on a poster with kind of the other names. So I'm going up there. So it's 2-day seminar, 10 working spots, unlimited audit spots.
And I think they've already sold those out, right?
Yeah, so they've sold the working spots out pretty quickly, which was super exciting. And that's in March. And I think there's still audit spots available as well. So we'll go up there. Anyone who wants to troubleshoot obedience will work with Shelby. Anyone who wants to troubleshoot protection or secondary will work with me. I'll go up, catch the dogs, bring all the equipment. I think for me, one of the biggest things and one of the things I'm most excited about is to I grew up as a decoy in a very different system than a lot of the sport dog decoys here.
Mhm.
So like starting with more security dogs, personal protection dogs, dual purpose dogs, things like that, or general purpose dogs, things like that. So my foundation and kind of the way I build dogs, I think is more focused on the bite work at like in isolation than it
Right.
is like a program or getting dogs to be able to do a list of behaviors around decoys or anything like that. And obviously the control in the secondary is super important. But for me, I think the biggest learning curve for me when I got started was like really understanding and being able to manipulate aggression and being able to work dogs in different mindsets and be able to control where the dog's headspace is at. And so I think being able to give people a little bit of a different look than probably most decoys who have got started in PSA or got started in
Mhm.
IGP and then have been in that same sport system for
Yeah.
kind of their whole career. That's definitely something I'm excited about because I feel like that can be like a missing piece when you're raising a dog in PSA and you're thinking like, okay, it's PSA, so they've got to be able to deal with this kind of bite, this kind of bite, this kind of bite, and these distractions. And then you are so focused on those distractions, and you don't necessarily generalize to different styles of pressure, different kinds of pressure. And then all of a sudden a decoy does something weird in trial and your dog hasn't seen that before, or just doesn't understand how to work through pressure in general and only understands how to work through pressure in a system. Makes sense.
And that when you get out there and start working with different people, that the the thing that I've noticed over the years is how when someone gets started with a very specific sport, they tend to adopt that way of working dogs as
Mhm.
like their religion or culture
Yeah.
or way of being, honestly, even down to like their body movements,
Yeah.
right? And I think that we've seen that when we're talking to some French ring people, it's or even Adrian here, the
Yeah.
purist,
Yeah.
where he's thinking we want someone that to do ring that is pure in their decoying, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's what they would say it in terms of not learning other crafts because it interferes with the way they, with the way they learn things.
Yeah.
And you'll see that over and over again, including specifically even with when I work with people that don't do PSA and they do Mondi or French ring, the
Mhm.
way they or MBBK, they do things very differently. They move very differently and
Yeah.
they don't move in a way to, I don't say not challenge the dog, but in a friendlier, more prey-like fashion, right?
Yeah.
Even when they're addressing or putting pressure on the dog, it's not very forward, where in PSA, they're like drive through the dog, right? If the
Yeah.
dog's in front of you, you are charging, you are
Yeah.
bringing the pressure and staying on top of the dog. Where if you work with people that are not involved in PSA, you see the difference where they are focused on, for good reasons, making sure that the dog's successful, right?
Mhm.
And that carries over into the way they work the dog start to finish, which is brings up a point for me. We've had the opportunity to train a couple of decoys this summer and people coming in, getting bites, et cetera. And now
Mhm.
we're working on some of our team now, our future team members, in terms of decoy skills. And so I noticed that you've laid out some sleeves, right? And you started, and we skipped that process and we went straight to working dogs. But I wanted to know a bit about your process of working dogs, right? So start to finish, what equipment do you use? How do you progress with the dog
Mhm.
all the way to getting them onto a field?
Yeah. So for me, equipment wise, I really like Kurt USA stuff. I really like the Sanom stuff, sleeve wise. I think they give you a really nice range where the steps aren't too big in between sleeves. So if you look at the Kurt USA stuff from the puppy sleeve, the short puppy sleeve from the forearm to the long puppy sleeve that you can slide up to the bicep, that's certainly a step, but it's a digestible step. That's
Mhm.
not, it's not challenging the dog's mechanics, grip, head size, etc. too much. And then moving like to their intermediate young dog, adult dog, and then their expert, which is for me, once a dog's on the suit, that's a sleeve that I'll use regularly for the dog because it's the same thickness as like a semi-comp suit. So it does give the dog that same feel and you can run a session super smoothly with it. So as far as like brands that I really like, the Sanov stuff and the Kurt USA stuff for me for building a dog is super, super good. I really like all their stuff. Where I start is I'm not with a lot of the dogs that I work with, the genetics are there. Whether it's I have a puppy now, so I know both parents really well. I know grandparents, some of the great grandparents. I'm super confident in the genetics. As far as working on minute details and making sure that every rep is exactly the way I want it, I'm less concerned with that with her. I'm much more concerned with like her attitude, just her willingness to be
Right.
there, her focus, being able to work for, longer and longer stints as she progresses and just making sure that the intensity is there. Um, and so whether it's starting on, I like a leather rag quite a bit. Um, it challenges the puppy's grip without it being too big or like unwieldy. It's easy to flick around, create a lot of prey movement. But I moved to a puppy sleeve pretty quickly. I like to make sure that the dog is comfortable biting the sleeve on my arm.
Right.
The only reason that I would go for a rag versus the puppy sleeve would be like if the puppy's head is literally too small to bite with my arm in the sleeve. And as well, I start introducing your cans, your mechanicals, your stick super, super early, all pre-teething for me. For me, if you're being smart about how you introduce things, I think there's no reason not to.
Right.
I think I want the dogs to see everything while it's all just this super fun game that we're playing together where for me, I want to be able to balance how challenged the dog is. So
Right.
if I'm not challenging the dog's grip, if I'm not challenging the dog with personal pressure, spatial pressure, anything like that, I want to be making that super easy and fun while, let's say, having two people stand on the sides with the cans going, or make sure that I'm using streamers or a stick and just popping the stick across the leash, stuff like that. So I'll start with all of that as a really young puppy and just make sure that like they're almost blind to it, like it's background noise.
Right. I was going to ask you when you're talking about the puppy section, a lot of people have questions about, is my dog right for the sport? Right.
Mhm.
And I think one of our clients with Kingston
Yeah.
brought that up where she was concerned about some of his behavior, which is what's not at all connected to the bite work. Right.
Mhm.
But a lot of people have that concern. And there's a giant guess of like, I have this puppy. I don't know if it's going to be good for it or not. What are indicators that you look for to see that the dog is actually going to be successful and going to do well in training? And then what are the things that you see that are concerning? You know, that when you're working
Yeah.
the dog, if they're not doing X, Y, and Z, you're thinking, oh, you know what, this is probably not the sport, or the dog doesn't have the ability to do this.
For me, that starts before you select a dog, get a dog, pick a puppy, whatever. Making sure that you're covering your bases as far as making sure that you're looking at the pedigrees, you're looking at the breeders, you're looking at dogs who they've produced, looking at offspring from the parents that you're looking at, and making sure that they're succeeding, whether it's in the same venue that you choose to or a relatively similar venue. And then you get the puppy, whatever, where it's from, what breed it is, making sure that you're not putting too much pressure on the puppy as far as expectations, I think is super important. So for me, if I have a puppy, it always feels like there's a million things to do. I've got to expose the puppy. I've got to socialize the puppy. I've got to make sure that I'm being careful about where I bring the puppy until it gets all of its vaccinations. I've got to make sure that I'm not doing anything that's spooking the puppy too much. I've got to make sure that I'm being cognizant of the puppy's responses to X, Y, and Z so that I can make notes of that, expose them to it further, be more intentional about how I'm handling the dog, whatever. So for me, the bite work comes after the lifestyle stuff.
Right.
So I want to make sure that the puppy's happy, healthy, able to just succeed in life in general. And as far as things that do concern me, it's really just like the dog doesn't want to be there. Like if I feel like I have to drag the dog through sessions, if I feel like the dog is constantly checking out and not checking out and getting distracted once or twice way, but actively trying to avoid bite work. If I see any displacement behavior, anything like that, especially like I'm not working puppies hard. I'm making sure that it's fun for them.
Right.
If I get a dog who, even with doing the whole song and dance, making sure putting a puppy sleeve on a leash, flinging it around, going crazy, making sure that I'm as enticing to the dog as possible. If they still, are sat there at the end of the leash, jumping up at mom, jumping up at dad, doing whatever, that's the biggest issue for me. Not necessarily because it means the dog will never be successful, but I don't want to continually bring my dog out for bite work when they're not enjoying it. If my dog's not enjoying bite work, it might be because they're not ready for it yet. It might be because there was a bad session at some point.
Right.
It might be because they're going through a weird period. There's a million reasons why. But like I said about my puppy, it's so much more about the mindset than it is about the kind of the physical reality of what's happening. So if the dog is at the end of the leash barking, but you can tell that there's a lot of stress there, that's just as big of a problem as the dog who just isn't activating, isn't interesting.
Right.
That being said, though, I think for me, some dogs, they just come out ready for it. They do everything that you want them to do. Their mechanics are fantastic. They take pressure like a champ. Those dogs exist. Those dogs are awesome. Most dogs aren't like that. That doesn't mean that the dogs who aren't like that aren't good.
Right.
But what it might mean is that dog isn't right for this sport. What it might mean is this dog isn't right for this handle.
Right.
I know for sure that I've seen dogs who were in someone's hands, didn't succeed, got changed to someone else's hands and had great success.
Right.
That doesn't mean one person is worse than the other. I mean, it might, but that doesn't mean in every case that one person is worse than the other. One person doesn't know what they're doing. It might just mean that person's way of working, that person's way of handling, way of training is better suited to that specific
Oh,
dog.
100%. I was just saying that yesterday, that the dog is only going to be as great as their handler, and the handler is only going to be as great as their dog, right? Like
Mhm.
overall, especially in a team sport.
Yes.
And I think people forget a lot that there is a massive difference between each dog, right? And
Yeah.
specifically, I feel bad for the dogs that are big and grow faster. You have that expectation that, hey, they should be doing X, Y, and Z now because they look like they're big. But in reality, you
Yeah.
think about they're like 6 months old, right? And it's about being able to handle the pressure or even the pressure of working with another person, right? Some
Yeah.
dogs are a little slower to come out of their shell. And I think about Bagel all the time because I
Yeah.
was working him yesterday, and to most people, he looks like a giant dog. He even on me when he's on the grip, he's a massive dog,
Yes.
but his eyeballs are like, "I'm just a puppy. What am I doing?" And so you can see how people can misinterpret that and think, "Hey, you know what? More pressure and more adrenaline is going to make this dog better." And in reality, people might end up crushing a dog like that because
Mhm.
he's so mentally young. And Mike Suttle said that to us in one of his presentations. It's like that 13-year-old kid that just because he looks like a football player, it doesn't mean that he can go to war, right? And
Yeah.
handle all the emotional fallout with that. He's not have the emotional maturity that it takes, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the same with dogs. I guess for you, where do you draw the line? Because sometimes people bring in dogs that they walk into the training room and they start sniffing around. They look at people and they're a little scared.
Mhm.
And they don't know what to do. And also then the handler gets nervous, their ego's hurt
Yeah.
because the dog that they
Yeah.
think is great
Yeah.
walks in and they're super concerned. Where do you draw the line in terms of, I don't want to say washing a puppy, right?
Yeah.
But at what point are you really concerned that the dog's not the type of dog that should be in this kind of environment?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of factors to consider. If a dog walks in and clearly it doesn't want to be there, my first question is going to be like, is this normal? Is this standard for the dog? And then my second question is going to be like, is there like an inciting incident?
Right.
So did something happen? Was the dog happy-go-lucky? Something happened and now this is where we're at?
Mm.
And if there isn't, and if it is standard, then we have to start considering, is the juice worth the squeeze? So if I have a client and they want to do sport as a hobby,
Right.
and they bring in a dog who clearly is highly stressed, it's up to me as the trainer to say, hey, is it worth it? Are the stakes high enough to
Right.
push this dog through this? Probably not, is almost always the answer. If you have a general purpose security dog who is with its handler and it's life and death sometimes, then if the dog gets a little bit stressy, dog's got to work through it. We've got to, it's worth it to push the dog through it. And ideally teach the dog how to deal with the stress and how to overcome it. But if it's a sport dog, these are sports that we do for hobbies. It's no one's full-time profession. It's not, it's a life or death thing. It's supposed to be fun. If it's not fun for you, for the dog, for me, maybe there's a disconnect as far as maybe I'm not the right trainer, which is fine. Maybe it's not the right dog. Maybe you're not the right handler, whatever it is, but figuring out that puzzle. But where I draw the line is really if there's a dog who comes in and is super stressed, that doesn't mean I'm going to say, go away. That doesn't mean I'm going to send the person home. 3-4 sessions in, if there's no
That's
improvement.
the inability to adapt is
Yes.
typically the challenge.
Yes. And also, I think if you're like grading dogs' temperaments,
Mhm.
ideally the dog comes in and a change of scenery, new equipment, a new person interacting with them is no problem. And their behavior doesn't change from what they're like at home. That's ideally. And that's a lot of dogs. I would say the majority of dogs are in that second tier of they come in and it's strange and they act strange, but they overcome it relatively quickly.
Right.
Or with a little bit of help. So you get a lot of dogs who out of drive might be a little bit spooky about being in a new place, having someone interact with them, whatever. And then that drive kicks in and it carries them through.
Right.
Which ideally the dog recovers out of drive quickly as well.
Mhm.
And it's not just like you have to mask it with drive. And then there's that third tier of the dog really struggles to adapt. And a lot of dogs are in that tier and are with good handlers and good trainers and have a plan and a good team, and they get better and better.
Right.
And eventually they can generalize stuff. If there's no adaptability, if the dog comes in and the same amount of stress is present every time, and even if it's a dog who you kick them into drive and they're fine, even if it's a dog like that's problematic for me because the dog can't live in drive. If you look at like a dog like Chapos, Rob's dog has bags and bags of drive. Drive is not the problem. And so easily he could have taken him to a new place that is super overwhelming for a little puppy, shown him a ball, dog would have looked
Mhm.
completely fine. But you don't really know how the dog feels about it. The dog doesn't know this. And we had a dog in a couple weeks ago, Egg,
Mhm.
who showed up and was visibly very stressed. A lot of licking his lips, a lot of yawning, jumping up on mom. And I was thinking, this is not great. This is pretty problematic.
Right.
After a few minutes, I was like, you know what, just drop the leash, let him sniff around. And immediately the dog became significantly more calm. And by the end, he's playing, he's having fun, he's doing behaviors, chaining
Right.
behaviors, he's doing everything he knows how to do. That dog's in that second category where there's weirdness to start, but the adaptability is enough where you take him to enough new places, you do enough fun
Right.
stuff, you're smart about how you handle him, and the dog's income.
Right.
The line for me is when there's no adaptability. And I, probably contrary to most trainers, I would rather call it a little bit too early than a little bit too late. So if you're talking about like fallout of stress with dogs, I would rather say, hey, maybe this isn't the dog for you, or maybe this is the sport for this dog 1 or 2 sessions early before like I know 100% and maintain whatever like sense of self-confidence that dog has, rather than go 1 session too late and shatter the dog, break.
Right.
I don't need to be 100% sure. If they want to go get a second opinion, absolutely, that's
Right.
totally fine. Go work with someone else. And if the dog finds success there, awesome.
Yeah, and I was going to add that I think the human aspect of things matters a ton in a lot of the training. I've seen it over and over again where people come in with really nice dogs that we would consider nice because they work nice, they have a lot of prey, they bite, they love food and toys, but they come in so nervous, right? And I see that I've noticed that in myself previously with previous dogs, and I've noticed it with other current handlers, is that their dogs completely feel the vibe that the handler has and they immediately responds to it. And when you really look at the world around them, they smell people being nervous. If my mom's nervous or my dad's nervous, why is there something wrong? What's going on? And that also feeds like human aggression, reactivity, all these other things outside of the sport and working dog world. And I think what's also interesting that you said was that in sport, we're doing sport. This isn't a working dog or this isn't a police dog or a security dog. Because then it's very different, right? You can have a dog that it's not great and do well in sport, right? Like my dog is not great. We talk about it all the time. People are like, and I appreciate this for everyone on Instagram. That's Lobo is the best thing since sliced bread, right? But he is not very social. He walks around with his hackles up, you know. But he also needs that. He needs to walk around confidently with his hackles off and not interact with people, but tell them, hey, I'm dangerous. Don't touch me. And then once he settles in, he's fine. And he doesn't do that. He does that at a distance, right? If I were to suppress that behavior, you're going to find out how not confident that dog is, right? And he's going to be nervous and anxious and lip licking and sketchy, right? And so as a trainer, my responsibility was to make him comfortable in the environments that he's going to need to be in, which are sport environments, right? You know, the Kurtz test and attack on handler and carjackings and all that kind of stuff for PSA. And I was thinking about the other day is that most of the time I'd like to say the dogs that I have, I like, or that I have around me or own, I would like for them to be easy to place. And because then you have a police department that wants one, or you can place one with a different handler. Someone's always looking for a great dog, and specifically in law enforcement sometimes. And I was thinking about my Lobo and I was like, oh no, I wouldn't see this dog being a police dog.
You're stuck with him.
I wouldn't, and I definitely see him being a personal protection dog for someone that wants that loyalty of that dog that's got skills and will bite people for real. That's that dog, but it's not a family dog. In fact, he was walking down the street the other day and he was in an off-leash shield with me and was walking nicely, but maybe 50 feet in front of us, there's a little toddler, and I didn't tell anybody this. There's a little toddler in a little snowsuit, you know what I'm saying? Because it's, you know, getting cold outside. So he's like running around, swinging his arms, and this dog is growling and snarling from a distance. And I'm like, he's doing it to the little kid. We know he's got little kid issues since the get-go. But that's why I say he's not a great dog. However, not being a great dog all around, he can still do well and do well in sport, right? And so when you're training a dog and decoying a dog, sometimes understanding the long-term objective is going to help decide whether this dog's cut out for that or not cut out for that, right? Because most dogs I've seen, and I've shut my mouth because over times with less experience, you're like, that dog's never going to make it, or this dog, right? And I've had conversations with those dogs' handlers, And I've also helped them and say, hey, we don't really know what the outcome's going to be, but we're going to help out together. And
Yeah.
they've proven me wrong. They've proven their own opinions wrong about dogs. To just consistent, repetitive training
Yeah.
patterns and creating outcome. And it's not just that only great dogs do well. In fact, great trainers with so-so dogs do
Yeah,
well. Right?
absolutely. And I think having that awareness about what your dog really is so important. Like, I think if there's one skill that is glossed over, it's being able to understand what your dog is. And so if I think about my dogs and I'm thinking about what's difficult for them. So Esme, my female, decoy pressure is she does room of doom and she gets thrown around and smashed into walls and she loves it. That to her doesn't register as the same kind of pressure. Pressure from me, she's very soft. And that makes her biddable and
it makes an
cooperative.
impact too. It makes an impact. It's like my dad yelled at me 2 weeks ago, and now I feel a certain way around these exercises.
And I have to be smart about, especially now that we're training for the ones, and neutrality has to be on point. There has to be really nice secondary in between the bites, things like that. The surprise scenarios, stuff that we have to be ready for. In my training, it's very different as far as I have to structure things in a way that's digestible for her, that's not stressful for her and between us and not create any conflict. And we've done a good job of navigating kind of her handler softness. And I feel, and then there's Bagel, who is, completely the opposite.
Right.
And he's a baby. And he's quite advanced in the bite work and he's coming on and he's doing really well, but he's such a different dog. And understanding, like you said, just because he looks like this big monster of a dog and just because he's 8 months old and he bites suit and he does the drive and he does the cans and whatever, that doesn't mean he's as advanced as he looks.
Right.
And being able to understand, when you say pressure, a lot of people think about the drive on the courage test or the handler attack coming out from behind a box wall or whatever. To some dogs, that's not pressure at all.
Right.
To some dogs, that's way too much pressure. And understanding, the different kinds of pressure, how to apply them, how to remove them, being tactful in the way that you present them and the way that you introduce them, I think is super important. And then as a handler, being able to understand and anticipate what's going to be hard for your dog, what's going to be easy for your dog, when it's time to do X, Y, and Z and things like that. And then back to how I progress a dog through a system. One of the earliest questions that I want to answer is where are the dog's strengths and weaknesses? That might be as far as mechanical stuff. So does the dog counter really nicely? Does the dog have a nice, full, natural grip? Or is the dog fine biting shallow? Does the dog naturally pull? Things it might be nitty gritty stuff where it's all trainable, but it might be the dog is totally fine with physical pressure, but personal pressure where there's a lot of eye contact and a lot of front on challenging the dog with your body language, vocal pressure, noise sensitivity, understanding how does the dog deal with pressure over time? Does it ramp the dog up and does the dog start redlining and just takes it? Does the cumulative pressure start to mess with the dog? So I feel for me, once I determine whether or not the dog is correct for the sport and whether the dog and the handler make a good team that makes sense, then I want to start to see whether it's me looking into the pedigree, me looking into some of the relatives, me looking into the parents, whatever, and seeing, where do they do really? What's their temperament like? Have there been issues with those dogs? Have there been things that they struggled with? And Dave Santiago said this to me the first time I ever met him. He was talking about how some dogs just eat pressure for breakfast, doesn't matter. Some dogs struggle with it, but he was like, we are dog trainers. It's up to us to train.
Right.
It's not up to us to show them. We're not dog showers. We're dog trainers.
Right.
And he said that to me, and it was one of the first times that I heard someone, especially someone like him, who really challenges dogs, really pushes.
Yeah, he does. From what I've seen, he does. Even as a person, he's a big dude. You know what I'm saying?
He brings the pressure. He wants a man-oriented, real dog. He wants a dog who is really there for the fight, really means it. And for someone like him who values that kind of intent and intensity so much, for him to say that was a breath of fresh air for me, to say it's okay if your dog can't do X, Y, and Z right now. That doesn't mean that they can't do it ever. It just means that we've got to be smart. We've got to actually train the dog. And for me, determining where the dog's strengths and weaknesses are and where does the nerve come out? Where does confidence come out? Where and how can I manipulate those things and kind of walk the line of challenging the dog and creating enough stress to push the dog, but understanding the difference between eustress and de-stress. Eustress being stress that the dog understands how to push through, and distress being stress that the dog can't win.
Yeah, it's like the slowly building the pressure with the dog over long periods of time, or even depending if you're heading into trial, like in short periods of time, and then there's like a peak, just like
Mhm.
anything else, and you have to like deload, right? Which
Yeah.
is, hey, let the dog relax, do shorter sessions, easier wins, right? And it's just responsibility of the handler to keep track of that.
Yeah.
One of the clients recently asked me, when is it okay for me to apply more pressure on the dog or use a training collar or use an e-collar? And my answer to that is like, there isn't an adequate amount of time that is necessary to then apply pressure. There isn't a specific age range. It's more or less how old is the dog and whether or not they have the exposure, training, and ability to handle pressure or higher expectations, right?
Yeah.
Because most of the time people put on training equipment, they want to make the dog do it. But did you layer it? Does the dog comprehend the behavior? Are we motivating the dog to do the behavior? Do they know to give in to pressure or maybe to push into a behavior with pressure?
Mhm.
And it's the same thing in bite work. If people jump straight to adding a ton of pressure, they're going to sink the ship,
Yeah.
right? They're going to cause problems with the dog. And most of the time, the earlier sessions with the dogs, the early puppy sessions with the dogs, or their first set of high stress, depends on the outcome of that or how it was approached determines how the dog's going to do in the future, right? And a lot of the time, we don't keep track of that. In fact, we don't keep track of most of the training that we
Mhm.
do, right? But there's a giant connection between all of the dog's experiences leading up to a moment and the behavior that you're seeing in the dog now. It's a summary of the things they've experienced,
Mhm.
not necessarily this is happening right now. And a lot of the times people view it as a specific situation that is only present now at this moment and nothing that was created prior to that, right?
Yeah. And I think also, I mean, talking about keeping track of your training, understanding like that there is cumulative stress involved with this training. So like you might have a super high prey dog who works all in prey. That doesn't mean that there's no stress.
Right.
That doesn't mean that it's not difficult for the dog. And that doesn't mean that you're not challenging the dog. Even
Right.
if the dog is in prey and you can effectively channel the dog back and forth and you can make sure that you challenge the dog and then you use prey to de-stress. You can manipulate the dog's mindset in that way, but that doesn't mean that just because you ended the session on an easy bite, the session wasn't stressful overall. And if you went to the next session saying, well, the last session ended on a downswing
Mhm.
pressure-wise, let's ramp it back up this time. If you're not paying attention to your progression and you don't understand exactly where the dog is within your progression,
Right.
then it's so easy to push too far.
Yeah.
And I also think, there's, for me, and I say this to people all the time, like if I'm ever left with, whether it's in obedience or protection, like if I'm ever left with, I can only force my dog to do, it's not worth it.
Right.
So, and probably a bunch of mistakes have been made prior.
Yeah.
So if I have nothing to do but force the dog into whatever I'm trying to get them to do, in that moment, sure, I might be able to make it happen,
Right.
but that's not training.
Yeah.
Like, that's
I would add that is force and then punish into doing, right?
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of, and I do this all the time. In fact, I saw some of the apprentices do this the other day in terms of training equipment, where a good example is for when we work puppies, right? We start pressure out in the background and it's loud in the background as the puppy gets closer. And as we get closer, it kind of damps them down. It becomes a little less noisy. And then the dog bites the toy and then everything stops, right? And they win. And that's how we build the stress around the dog. It also becomes a roadmap of how to accept pressure,
Yeah.
right? Eventually the pressure doesn't stop and they have to stop it, right? Eventually the pressure might get louder and more hectic as they're approaching, right?
Mhm.
And then they stop it and they channel the decoy and everything. And the that kind of guidance is specifically in dog training. It applies everywhere, even when you're layering training equipment, where if you teach a dog a behavior and then you layer in pressure before the behavior, right? Pressure into a place, and then the dog gets really good at it. And then what people tend to do is that they forget that's what made the dog good at the behavior. And
Yes.
then now we're only going to correct if the dog doesn't do it. Place, dog doesn't do it, correction. And sooner or later, the dog starts changing the way they feel about the activities, right? Or they become nervous about making a mistake. So they start offering different behaviors.
And I would argue it's almost always sooner rather than later.
100%.
They're smart. They are always anticipating. They're always looking to bridge the gap between what they're doing now and what they should be doing or need to be doing or want to be doing. I think when how I describe bite work to people who are like just getting into it, don't really understand it, or people who are like just seeing pressure for the first time is everything that I do, I'm presenting the dog with a puzzle. It can be a difficult puzzle, it can be an easy puzzle, it can be multiple steps, it could be one step. But really putting the puzzle together is always the same. I'm asking for the same answer pretty much every time. I'm asking for, especially if we're working PSA or we're doing the protection dogs, I'm looking for counters. I'm looking for pushing. I'm looking for commitment. Whatever I do, the specifics of it down the line shouldn't matter. I should be able to do whatever. And the dog should know whatever's going on. It should wash over me and I should push. That's the answer. And if I can, from a tiny puppy, show them like, hey, there's a lot going on. It's okay. Push. You're right. Boom. It's all gone. And if I can generalize that as quickly as possible, you can get a dog who we went to that French ring summit and Lobo and Esme both came out. They've never done anything like this. And they're not built for it. They're not ring-y dogs. Like Lobo's massive and he's lumbering and he's slow. Esme's a German Shepherd. She's never seen any ring type training before. And it was chest bites. It's a target they do not know. It's a target that's very challenging for the dog because you can't make it easier. They're biting you in the middle of the chest. Like you are straight on with the dog. And both of them are quite advanced at bite work and quite proficient in it, but it's still really hard. It's a new decoy, a big decoy, a very intense decoy. It's her. He's the guy. Right. New place, big crowd around, and both of us got our dogs out. I don't think either of us hesitated at all, thinking like they might not do it.
No, because we've built them to that point and we've gotten past the weird things, right? They're confident that.
And it's not about, but we've been to enough places or have been to enough decoys. It's no, they just understand that whatever else is going on, their job is singular. It's the same every time. We're asking for the same thing. It's very simple. And so I think if I have a dog in kind of my system and I'm training the dog from a puppy to an adult dog, for me, when I start to get really excited about the dog's potential and the dog's progress is when I've done enough where I can grab whatever, and it can be trash can lids or it can be a tarp and it can be something the dog has never seen before. And I'm confident and I'm pretty sure that the dog is going to see that and go, cool, I'm acknowledging it. I'm aware of it, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't change what I'm doing. And so once I hit that point with the dog, then you can really get creative and you can really have fun and really push the dog and see, what is the depth of character? How deep does this go? How committed is this dog?
Right. You're going to be running a seminar in Alaska. And one of the things you've also mentioned is that in those seminars that you've now run, you do troubleshooting, right? What kind of things come up a lot or a common denominator in your workshops? And then what can people expect from you coming up in your following workshops?
I get a lot of grip mechanic stuff. So I think whether it's like an access to decoy problem or like it's a foundational problem or it's a genetics problem, I think a lot of people, especially in PSA, die on the hill of grips. You know what I mean? They need that full crushing grip. They need that pushing grip. And I think a lot of people are super fixated on it, especially with young dogs. And a lot of people they won't progress through, whether it's whatever system you work, whether it's you start on a wedge, then move to the chomp, then move to a sleeve, they won't progress the dog unless the grips are exactly the way that they want it. So I get a lot of grip issues, which is pretty common. And then depending on kind of the crowd, you get a lot of dogs who they just want the dog to liven up a little bit. Like the group that I work with in Canada, it's 3 dogs who are killers, and then a group of novice handlers with new dogs. Some dogs bought as pets, lived as pets, and then they decided, let's get into sports. Some rescue dogs, some rehomes. It's about having a good time. It's about having fun with your dog and having actionable steps. Like that's really big for me is like, one, I want to make sure everyone has a good time. I want to make sure that everyone comes away saying, I'm glad I did. That was worth it. That was fun. My dog enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It's a good vibe. That's really important for me. The second thing is I want to be able to make sure that everybody has actionable steps. And when I say actionable, it's not, your next session do X, Y, and Z. It's like, I'm going to talk to you about what's your access to decoys like? Who are your decoys? How do you feel about them? Are they, do you feel like what I'm telling you to do or what I just did, they can replicate and then they can take the next steps? Do you feel like you need to travel? Do you feel like you need to work on some stuff at home? Whatever kind of their situation is, catering to that and then making sure that they have steps and they understand where their dog is at,
Right.
where they want the dog to get to, and what are some things that they can do, some like real kind of tangible goals that they should be able to achieve in relatively short order.
Right.
And then as far as what to expect for me, like I think I've been to a bunch of seminars, I've been to a bunch of workshops, I've trained with a lot of different people from different backgrounds, venues, different sports. And for me, one of the big things is I feel like a lot of decoy development, like camps or weekends or whatever, it's like a taster of everything. Like one of the first decoy like educational experiences I had was at La Rockmore Working Dogs with Ian Morgan and Asa Wright. And it was 5 days. And we started with a little bit of theory, and then we went into puppies, and we were mostly watching, and then younger dogs, adolescent dogs, older dogs, finished dogs, dogs on chomps, dogs on biceps, legs, triceps, whatever. And it was a little taster of, hey, this is KMPV, this is IGP, this is PSA, this is a security dog, this is a police dog. Here's a little bit, take 1-2 bites, tell me what you think, we'll go over it. And I think the effect of those things is not that you're a decoy when you're done, but you know whether or not you're interested. You know whether or not you want to progress. For me, what I want to start getting into more is whether it's 2 days, 3 days a week, whatever, but like really chunking it up as far as, hey, we're going to go over like equipment, what equipment to use, when to use it, why you're using what you're using, how to maintain it, where to get it, how to make the decision about what you're going to use with the dog in front of you so that you can set the dog up for success. Like the little things like that, I think.
This last Sunday, I spent some time going over just the list of equipment. Before we even get a dog out, before we even talk about that, let's go over what to use. And it's so funny because we're sitting in a podcast room filled with a ton of equipment
that we do not know how to use.
That we don't know how to use.
And the podcast would be better if we did.
100%, right? And it's just one of those things where you really, as an instructor, people really need to put together programs that make sense and are start to finish, right? The little details, the foundational skills, the knowing what sleeve to rely on, then how to present, then if the dog's having grip issues and it's a baby, knowing when to maybe change the sleeve or go back to a foundational exercise. Those things matter so much more because if they can get that, if people can get the first 3 months of their puppy's bite work done well, the rest is easy, right? Yes. And if your dog can make it to 9 months old and there hasn't been anything disastrous or terrible sessions or constant pivoting of ideas, right? Pivoting in training programs, your dog's gonna be in good shape. But if for the first year, you're changing your opinion, for the first year, you're going to different resources, you're not listening to anybody, and you're applying everyone's advice, you're going to have problems with that dog.
I think one of the biggest things is just consistency, finding someone who you like to work with, finding someone who's available, who's around, who's accessible, being able to work regularly. But like we had at club on Sunday, there's a dog it was their first birthday. Happy birthday, Busy. It was their first birthday on Sunday. The dog's been having a little bit of an issue with its grip where it'll get full and then it'll adjust. I think it's to breathe. I think the dog's just not breathing through its nose. But I hadn't worked the dog for a few weeks now. And the dog came in, gave it a bite on a wedge, then a bite on a Belgian sleeve on the forearm, and then a bite on the bicep. And even just taking one grip on like a baby sleeve and then one grip on the forearm, then when I returned to the bicep, it was significantly better. The dog's grip was really nice for the rest of the session. And I think one of the missing pieces for a lot of seminars or a lot of kind of educational things is pivoting in the moment. I went to the Deadpool decoy school, the advanced one, over Thanksgiving. And it was great. And a lot of dogs did really well. You could really see decoys progressing. John's a really good teacher and he had a really good staff around. It was fun. No, dogs had fun. It was a good time. But I do think there was one thing that I would change is you set up an exercise. So whether it's the man orientation drill, the redirect drill, and you teach that exercise and you bring dogs out who are able to do that exercise well without much of a mishap. And if there is a mishap, immediately you pause, get a new dog, switch decoys, whatever it is. It's difficult to teach because you need a dog who's not going to be negatively affected by improper decoy work. But I think whether it's through demonstration, or whether it's through talking about theory, or whether it's through actively working through it in the moment, being able to understand when to pivot, when to stop, when to keep going, when is it worth it to push through? When is it not worth it? And you really need to switch. Like this dog, it was on, an ALM bicep sleeve and it just kept just turning its head just a little bit. So it just wasn't full on one side, which again, it's not the end of the world, but people really love those big, full pushing grips. And that is something to aim for. And it's definitely something to work towards. But it wasn't worth it to just keep putting the dog in the bicep just because that was like the more advanced sleeve. And that's where the dog, is a year old, should be on.
Right.
Same way with Bagel. He's 9 months old. He's been biting the suit for about a month now. I'm now taking him away from the suit because I'm like, great.
You're deloading. Yeah.
I've seen what I need to see. I know that you want to bite. You'll bite wherever. You'll bite whatever I put in front of you. That's great. I'm thrilled with that. Now, instead of just saying, well, he's on the suit now, so now he'll live on the suit for the rest of his life, we're going to do entries on a wedge where it's significantly easier to build the picture that I want. We're going to start doing secondary, but on chomp sessions, like kind of understanding, and then back to the idea of understanding what is pressure for the dog. What is difficult for the dog? What's difficult for that dog tells me that what I should be doing is, instead of just continuing to send him at the suit and saying like, yeah, sometimes he gets a little bit unsettled. Sometimes he sits down in his grip and starts to pull. And it's not like
and it's not always either. You can tell that he's just like, I've been on the suit too long. I don't know what to do next. Right.
Yeah, he's not getting slips.
Right.
It's a longer bite. It's difficult for a puppy.
Yeah.
He's just mentally immature. And so I've definitely been guilty in the past of being like, oh, my dog's a banger. My dog's he can handle this, and then breaking the dog.
Right.
And now it's cool. I'm glad that I've seen how quickly he can progress in the bite work. And I'm glad that like he's confident enough and he's fluent enough in his foundations to progress to the suit and have his grips be really nice and all of that. But it's so much more beneficial to me to know when it's time to take a step back and do puppy stuff with my puppy.
Right.
And I feel like one of the things that's missing in decoy education is, and it's hard. Like I get that it's hard because you need a bunch of dogs. You need dogs who are finished, or you need dogs where people aren't super concerned with there being issues with their mechanics or whatever it is, like dogs who can handle bad decoy work or new decoy work, or dogs who aren't actively competing. Like those are hard to find. You need, a venue for it. You need a group of people who are interested enough. It's hard. I get that. But I feel like most people who are proficient decoys had a mentor and somehow got involved with that mentor and were there for months and months, if not years.
Right.
And that's how they got good. And so they just got good, watching, taking bites.
Good instruction, good repetition.
Yeah. And so these like week-long or weekend-long things, I get that they're not like the best vehicle for teaching someone how to be a decoy. And you're certainly not a decoy by the end of one of these, no matter who's teaching, I think. But I do think if instead of saying like, it's going to be 2 days, 3 days, and we're going to go over from puppy stuff all the way to adult dog stuff, and you're going to see the whole progression. I think there's a place for that for people who are like almost there, almost ready to start working dogs under. I think for the people who are like, hey, I'm new to this, seemed cool, taken a couple bites before, or like I'm in a club, so I've been around bite work for a long time now. I want to be helpful to the club, so I want to learn to work dogs.
Right.
I wouldn't start those people at something like that. I would start those people being like, cool, whether it's like an online thing or whether it's a long form thing or whether it's a mentorship thing or whatever it is, it's going to be, we're going to go over equipment stuff. We're going to go over fitness stuff. We're going to go over how to prepare your workspace. We're going to go over how to structure your sessions. We're going to go over understanding a progression, how to pivot in the moment. We're going to go over things that it's a lot of detail. It's a lot of minutia, and it's a lot of stuff where the stakes are pretty high when you're decoying a dog.
Yeah. And I think you would also get more successful decoys and more decoys that are capable. One of the things, and maybe some people don't like this, but as soon as things are hard, complicated, not understood very well, or maybe they don't like the people that are involved in it, like the attrition is just huge, right? Yeah. And by creating a platform or a system that allows someone to learn thoroughly, that also attracts a completely different group of people. And that also allows more success for more decoys, et cetera, and for more decoys to be available, because honestly, that's what sports need in order to continue growing at the rate that they're growing. But no, that's great, man. I appreciate you sharing all your insights, and I'm excited for your seminars coming out, which are going to be huge. Guys, so anyone listening, Scott, when is your workshop? What dates? And then there are any spots left, or you have out of spots?
So it's the second to last weekend of March. It's up in Alaska. So Alaska people, get involved. There's audit spots left. There's no working spots left. That being said, they're having out some amazing trainers, people who you can learn a lot from, and people who work differently to me, have a different background to me, whether it's you've got a working spot for me or not a spot for me, and are looking for just a kind of a different look or anything like that, or whether you enjoy mine and want to come back for more. get involved. So you can contact Reaper Canine on Instagram, or AK Hellhounds also on Instagram. Or if you drop me a message or an email, I can get you in touch. So whoever wants to come.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being here today. And then good luck on your upcoming workshops.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys next time.